Welcome to MECHANOTECHNICS N6. Today's video is going to be on reduction gearboxes. If you do not have the study guide that I am using, I will recommend that you request it from me so that it will facilitate your studying because it's the same study guide that I am using in this presentation and in all the Mechano videos that I have. Okay, so it's a study guide that I developed myself. So you are welcome to request it from me and I will see how I can get it to you. Let's begin. So, what is a gearbox? Basically, the name gives it away. It's a box that's got sets of gears inside of it. And the purpose of a gearbox is pretty much to make certain things possible because it is not practical to connect the engine, or should I say, the driving shaft from the engine directly to the wheels. Okay, I'm thinking of a car here. It's not practical to connect the driving shaft from the engine directly to the wheels of the car, okay? Because if you try to do that, you will run into issues, some of which are the engine itself is rotating super fast, okay? So you can't just take that driving shaft with that rotational speed and try and connect it to a wheel. That is not practical. You must think of a way to slow that speed down, okay? And so the gearbox allows you to do that. Okay. Another benefit of the gearbox is not just that you can change the speed output, but you can also change the torque output. The reason it's important to be able to control torque is because when you're driving, you get to situations where the weight that you need to drag, okay, the weight that the engine needs to drag is great. Okay, it's not always the same weight. Of course, the car has got the same weight, but then if you have to drive uphill, for instance, the weight that the engine will need to drag will be bigger than if you were driving on a flat surface. The reason for that is because when you're driving uphill, there is a component of gravity that begins to act against you. Okay, and so now the engine has to drag more weight. And if ever you are driving, you will know that you will rather use uh, the first gear, or maybe in some cases the second gear when you're driving uphill, because those lower gears they produce a higher torque. And when we speak of torque, torque is basically that capacity that gives the vehicle the ability to drag weight, okay, to move weight from a state of a lower speed or even rest to a state of a higher speed. Okay, so very, very important. And so sometimes when you're driving, you need to change the torque output that you are using. Okay, and so to be able to do that, you're gonna need to have a gearbox. Okay, if the engine was all by itself and directly connected to the wheels, you wouldn't be able to change the torque output. Okay, so basically, if you reduce the speed, okay, meaning if you pick one of the lower gears, the out the output speed is low, but the torque is high. And then you have situations where maybe you're driving on a flat surface and you want to move really fast. Since in this case you're not having to drag a lot of weight with you, then you can pick one of the higher gears where the speed then is going to be great, but the torque is small. But of course, since you don't have to drag much weight, you can do with a small torque output. Okay, and so to be able to change speeds like that, you need a gearbox, okay? And lastly, the gearbox also allows you to go in reverse, okay? If we had the engine directly connected to the wheels with no gearbox in between, that will mean that if the driving shaft was rotating clockwise, the wheels will also have to rotate clockwise. You will have no option to reverse, okay? But with a gearbox, you can have on the input a clockwise rotation, but then you can have a gear arrangement inside of the gearbox that allows the output to be anti-clockwise. Okay, so those are some of the benefits of having a gearbox. There are many, but I just wanted to outline those ones. Okay, And so, what I am going to speak about here, you can just follow the yellow dot on the screen to see what I am referring to. Okay, so I'm going to talk just about some of the important terms that you need to be acquainted with when we're talking about gearboxes. The first one is a gear train. Okay, so when we speak of a gear train, you have two types of gear trains. You have a simple gear train, or you have a compound gear train. Okay, so a simple gear train is one where you just have two gears meshing with each other. Okay, so you have gear A and gear B, and these two gears are meshing. Okay, and if those two gears are meshing, when I say meshing, it means they are connected. Okay, they are basically their teeth are contacting each other. Okay, so they are connected, so that's what meshing means. Okay, so when you have two gears meshing, okay, then you will refer to that arrangement as a simple gear train. Okay, but if it's more than two gears, then it becomes a compound gear train. Okay, so usually when you have gears meshing, you will always have one gear that is driving. Okay, and usually the driving gear is what we refer to as the pinion, and then it's often smaller than the driven gear. And then the driven gear, of course, is another gear, but that one is not connected to any power source. Okay, generally. The gear that is connected to a power source will be the pinion or the driving gear. Now, having said that, okay, let us look at the formulas that you need in this particular module. Okay, so we will begin with the gear ratio. Okay, the gear ratio is equal to the input speed divided by the output speed. Okay, and when I say speed here, I am really referring to the rotational frequency, which is going to be given to you in rotations per minute or rotations per second. Okay, and of course, you know by now that we use the symbol N for rotational frequency. Okay, so the gear ratio is equal to the input rotational frequency divided by the output rotational frequency. And the most common formula, which you are familiar with even from Mechano N5, is that it's equal also to the product of number of teeth of followers. Okay, followers are the driven gears. Okay, so it's equal to the product of number of teeth of followers divided by the product of number of teeth of drivers. The drivers are the driving gears. Okay, very important. So let us look at this arrangement that you see in the picture here. Okay, this arrangement here. When you look at this, you can see that this is, of course, a compound gear train, okay, because we have more than two gears meshing. And when you look at that, the exercise I want you to do here is to try and identify which of the gears are drivers and which are driven. Try and understand that. Of course, it's already written on the picture, but try and understand why, okay? Of course, it's quite easy to see. If you look at A here, A, of course, will be a driver. Since A is a driver, the gear that's immediately connected to it must be a driven gear. Okay, you cannot have two drivers connected to each other. That will cause problems in an engine. Okay, you need to have a driver gear connected to a driven one. Okay, so since A is the driver here, then of course the gear B that you have immediately meshing with A must be a driven. Okay, and of course you understand that if A is rotating clockwise, B must of necessity rotate anti-clockwise. And now, as you can see, B and C are two gears connected to a shaft. Okay, so it's basically two gears, and in between them you have a shaft connecting the two. Okay, that's why you see gear C is here. It's a small gear, and then gear B is the big gear, but the two are, they seem to be one on top of the other, but they're not really on top of the other. In between them you have a shaft that connects them. Okay, like a small shaft connecting the two gears. And because they are connected as one unit, therefore the rotational speed of B